Hey everybody, welcome back to the Divergent Comics YouTube channel. Here with another comic creator interview. These are always fun. Today I have someone who was, I guess introduced is the best way to put it, by a friend of the YouTube channel, Paul at Acorn Comics. Highly recommended Dee to be interviewed, and I had some time to really look into what Dee does in regards to art and all of that, and I have to say I'm becoming a fan. I was already kind of a fan just based off of the variant cover that you did for Paul for Heroes and Zeros, I believe, and I really enjoyed it. So, Dee, if you can, introduce yourself to the people and tell us how you got started making comics.
My name is Dee Fish. I am a cartoonist and writer. I have been making comic books, since I stopped eating the crayons as a little kid. The first comic that I put out self-published online was Dandy and Company. It was an online comic strip that started in 2001 and ran to 2018. Based on a character I created when I was 8 years old. So, I've been doing this for as long as I don't ever remember not making comics and telling stories.
Nice.
I have done, I did Dandy and Company. I did a graphic novel series called The Well Keeper. I have done stories for Image Comics, the PvP guest strips. I have done work for the Perhapanauts and Telos, a few other books. I did art and co-writing on a comic, kind of a fantasy, urban fantasy horror comic called Carpe Noctem. And the last few years, I've been doing a semi-autobiographical webcomic called Finding Dee. It's
Yeah.
about the ins and outs of coming out as transgender in your 40s while trying to make it in comics. I had a stint of about 6 months as the inker on the Dick Tracy comic strip and
hmm
did 2 weeks as a guest artist on that as well. And I've done work for the webcomic Giant Girl Adventures with Sabrina Pandora. And then most recently, The Olympian with Paul in Acorn Comics.
Yeah, very illustrious career. Like I said, as I started researching you more, I was like, I understand why it's
I
amazing.
stay I stay busy.
Yeah, I can imagine. Everyone wants to
Oh,
have Dee.
and I'm writing a series of werewolf novels too, so I'm very busy.
Now that's interesting. We're gonna have to talk about that.
Yes.
Definitely for sure. Uh, so like we got a real broad overview of like what all you've touched in regards to comics, like from indie to image. It's insane, honestly. The amount of work that you've done, the fact that you do your own art as well is also really amazing. Which if those of you who haven't seen Dee's art, like I said, check out the variant cover that Dee has done for Acorn Comics. Also, go to Dee's. I believe you have Instagram page, correct?
I have an Instagram. You can kind of find everything if you go to just artofdfish.com. Pretty much
There you
everything
go.
can be linked through artofdfish.com.
There you go. So the link will be in the description below. Y'all should definitely go check that out because, like I said, Dee does really good work. I really like the art style, and like I said, anyone who's a friend of Paul is a friend of me. So phenomenal. But Dee, you make your own stories, but then you also get commission. Which do you
Yes.
prefer?
Oh, telling my own stories. I don't mind working collaboratively. I have a lot of fun working with other writers on projects, but like my brain is just absolutely filled with stories, and I'm a control freak. So I really like just telling my own stories. Collaboration is a different beast. It scratches different itches. Um, Working with Paul has been a lot of fun. I work with Sabrina Pandora a lot, and she's a lot of fun to work with. I've gotten to work with some really Todd DeZago from the Perhapanauts and Telos and Spider-Man, and he's an amazing writer. I've gotten to work with a couple times. It's fun, but I guess because I'm so used to doing my own stuff, I always let writers know, like, if you want to work with me, you know, I will send notes and say this page needs more panels or something.
Mm-hmm.
um, I'm never rude. I don't disrespect the writers, but I'm always like, we need a beat here. We need an emotional moment. We need the camera to linger so the character can think and you can see it.
Right.
That's the stuff. That's the visual storytelling stuff that gets me excited. So that's the kind of stuff I like to do. But I mean, honestly, yeah, I prefer doing kind of an everything myself.
No, yeah, I get that, and that I feel like that actually probably makes it better for someone to collaborate with you, because I know a lot of artists typically stick to just doing the art, and they prefer to be commissioned. They don't really like to do the whole thing themselves because they can visualize a story, but they can't like put together a cohesive story many times. And then I know many writers they don't like to do the artwork because it's like, do I
There are
really
two
want to
co-
try to make this look good, or am I going to just try to settle for a sick figure type of thing?
they are very different disciplines.
Mm-hmm.
Writing and art, the art are two very very different disciplines. But early on, as a kid, I decided early on that I wanted to make comics, and I had all my. I was like any other kid, you make up your own superheroes, you make up your own, cartoon characters, and so I just started learning how to make the stories myself and write them myself, and I had to if I wanted cool stuff to draw, I had to come up with stories.
Mm-hmm.
And the longer that got, the more, I'd start getting more disciplined about it, more start saying, okay, stop writing stories that don't force you to draw things you don't like to draw.
Yeah.
You got to make yourself draw the stuff that's hard. You got to make yourself, draw the parts of the stories that sometimes people find boring, if it's not all but I mean, I love drawing conversation scenes. When somebody's like, I'm sorry, it's all talking heads. And I'm like, that's acting. That's performance stuff. That's fun. Punching is easy.
Mm-hmm.
Conversations are fun.
Yeah, I love that because I'm more, as I've gotten more into like movies, TV, and comics, I've become more a fan of those conversation pieces. There's those lines of dialogue where you're just really getting to understand the characters and who they are and getting to understand how they interact with other people. And that really drives you more into the psyche of those characters. So I find that to be interesting. And I believe that in your situation, because you are a writer and an artist, that makes it even more appealing because you get to not only understand character motivation. So when you're writing their dialogue or when you're writing multiple story arcs, you get to grow their character, but also allows you to put them in unique situations whenever you're coming up with a new storyline or a new scene where it's like, oh, you know what? I think this would be really cool to see done with this character because this line of dialogue I remember from like 2 books back gave some really good insight to this character.
Yeah. As a writer as well, when I'm working with a script, I am picking it apart to a degree where I'm like, okay, well, if this character is saying this in this panel here and he's being confrontational with a friend, well, what's going on in their head and how does that show? I'm a big believer in the idea that if you take all the dialogue off the page, the reader should still have an idea of what the tone of that page should be.
I agree.
Like, even if it's just talking heads, you should have an idea of, is there conflict? Are they joking? Is one of them nervous with the other one? When I worked with Sabrina Pandora on Giant Girl, um, I would read in the script and I knew, like, oh, so Ronnie, the main character in Giant Girl Adventures, she likes to deflect. She doesn't like to have her emotions being bared. So how does that work out visibly? What does she do? Is she avoiding eye contact? What's her body language like? Her power physically enables her to be the biggest person in the world or the room.
Mm-hmm.
So how does she deal with somebody who's looking down on her emotionally? She doesn't like that, and how does that that kind of stuff is what gets me excited in storytelling. And as a writer, I'll take the script and I'll pick it apart and figure out how do I do that? How do I show that visually? And a lot of that came
Right.
from studying animation over comic books.
That's a good point. That is a good point. So actually, I'm glad you brought that up because something I want to know as I studied a little bit about like your art style, looking at some of the stories that you've released, specifically Dandy and Company was one that really caught my eye. I wanted to know like what type of genres do you like to consume, whether it be in comics, TV, or movies?
I mean, I love good science fiction. I love comedy. I love 80s slashers.
Mm.
I love a good psychological thriller. I love a lot of stuff. Like I've been loving lately this trend of mystery stories, like Knives Out and the new
Yeah.
Poirot movies. Even though they messed up the character of Poirot, I still love those movies. They're like a guilty pleasure. It's like,
Yeah.
why is Poirot getting into chases with people and fight scenes? That's not Poirot, but it's still good movies. I love a good mystery story. It's a funny thing because, like you were pointing out with Dandy and Company, what genre is Dandy and Company? Because it's a boy and his dog. So, it's like Peanuts. Well, except that they fight alien invaders and go on adventures. Oh, so it's like DuckTales. But there's a lot of slapstick,
Hmm.
Looney Tunes stuff too. It's a grab bag. It's,
Yeah.
you know, Dandy and Company was it was a kitchen sink comic. It was a whatever genre it wanted to be. With the werewolf novels, people are like, well, is it horror? Is it comedy? Is it drama? Is it a mystery? And I'm like, yes, it's all of those things. I am terrible. Marketers hate me because the stuff that I do does not fit into individual boxes very well because I don't find the world does.
That's a good
Um,
point. I like that.
if I'm trying to make characters that seem believable and fleshed out, well, then there's going to be moments that are sad or emotional, or even in a slapstick comic strip. In Dandy and Company, there were serious moments every now and again, not often. Um, I'm doing my little werewolf books, and it's about a tight knit group of found family friends. So they're gonna joke with each other and poke each other and mess around, and then things will get serious, and things will get dramatic, or things will get romantic, or they'll get scary. And it goes. Most of my favorite stories do that. They jump around, and they're not constrained by the rules of just what that is in that regard. Sorry, I can meander like crazy on a topic.
No, I like that because I agree. I think if you look at life or if you look at some of the best stories, they're not solely focused on one genre. Some of the best stories have some type of hodgepodge mix of, all of the different genres. You'll see a story maybe marketed as a psychological thriller, but if you watch it and pay attention to it long enough, you'll see that not only is it a psychological thriller, it's an action adventure piece, it's a dramedy. That alone, a dramedy, like a drama
Oh, yeah.
comedy type of thing, like that, it's insane. So I love that you mix that in your stories.
Oh, yeah, I grew up late '70s, early '80s, so I was growing up. That was the era of the dramedy. That was when like
Mm-hmm.
MASH ruled the world, and it's hilarious. And then they'll start talking about the horrors of war, and it's absolutely heartbreaking. And you're
Mm-hmm.
just and I think in current, I think we're in kind of a golden age of storytelling and like cartoons for kids because like
Agreed.
behind me, I've got the Ducktales poster, and I loved Ducktales in the '80s. It was fun, but boy, that new show, like I cried at that thing. I'm like, why am I crying at Ducktales? Because they're doing this incredible storytelling and. They're doing all this moving and emotional stuff. And that's, even in the comics, like Don Rosa's Life and Times of Scrooge McDuck is one of those. What genre is that? Oh, it's historical fiction, comedy, adventure. I cried at a couple chapters in that thing with Scrooge.
Mm-hmm.
It's like Scrooge McDuck, and I'm crying at this comic book because it's pulling all these emotions. Jeff Smith's Bone is a high watermark for a story that is got everything from epic fantasy to slapstick to character humor to romance to straight up terrifying scary horror stuff. I love a good genre mix.
Yeah, me too. I agree. I'm the same way. So, you've already kind of talked about Dandy and Company and kind of given a brief overview of it. But I would like you to, because this is the first thing I noticed when Paul first introduced us. You had the comic series called Finding D.
Yes.
Can you tell us a little bit about that in a bit more detail? Like, where did that come from, and kind of what made you pursue that as a story?
Pardon me. Like I said earlier, Finding D is it's a semi-autobiographical webcomic. It's about the pardon me again, the ins and outs of coming out as transgender in your 40s. Not in my 40s anymore, but I was when I started. You know, the finding the humor in the everyday kind of situations that happen with that. It came out of the fact that in Dandy and Company, I was a recurring character. I was the cartoonist. If Dandy didn't like the way a strip storyline was going, he could yell at me and complain and be like, "Hey, boss, what the hell is going on with this storyline? I'm barely in this strip." And that was one of the ways I came out. When I came out as trans, I literally had Dandy come up to me with the script, going, "Hey, boss, I noticed I'm not in the strip for a couple of days," and he's looking at me, and I'm just there as Dee, and like, this is confusing. And so I come out to him and I explain, "I'm Dee, I'm transgender, and blah blah blah," and he's like, "Okay, well, Dee, why am I not in my script?" So I came out in the comic strip, and after about, I started writing a blog, just a little, like, a Tumblr blog called Finding Dee. I didn't think about it. I just like, oh, Finding Dee, that's a name. And I'd write about my experiences. And I'm like, okay, well, this is happening. Very early on, the negative experiences, the glares, the ugly looks, the mean stares, people being confrontational, people being rude. And what I discovered is, very quickly, that blog was getting insanely negative. Like, all I was writing was the doom and gloom, all the worst experiences, everything bad that was happening. And I was just venting into the void. And I'm one of those people, I don't feel better when I do stuff like that. I feel worse. It makes me feel worse. It makes those negative feelings bubble up in me. So I combined that with the fact that literally every friend that I still had, the friends that stuck around, were like, "Oh, you should make a comic about this. All this cool stuff, this interesting stuff that's happening. That'd make a great comic. You should make a comic about this. You should make a comic about this." And so after a year, I'm like, "Fine, I'll make a comic about this." Which is literally the first Finding Dee strip, is me saying, "Fine, I'll make a comic. Ooh, I can curse in this one." Because, Dandy and Company was all ages. And a comic strip based on my life is going to incorporate my mouth, at least initially. And so what I decided to do was, I love comic strips, that format. And Dandy had been, originally when I started Dandy, it was 7 days a week, structured just like a newspaper comic strip. So 4 panels, black and white, Monday through Saturday, big color Sunday strip. After a while, it became just a Sunday strip, but structured up and down, so that it fit better in comic books. So, like, these are some of the Dandy and Company strips. So they're laid out just like a Sunday comic strip, but made easier for printing in comic books. That's my preferred printing format. So I started Finding Dee the exact same way. I never sat down and did model sheets or designed anything. I just started telling the basic story of myself, my partner Heidi, our dog. We have a little poodle named Poe who's got incontinence issues. He pees when he's nervous, so he wears a diaper.
Aww.
And I just started kind of like saying to myself, okay, well, I'm going to try to do this in my I love comic strips. It's always been one of my favorite forms of the medium of comics, that humor panel structure. And I'm like, but if I do it as a comic strip, if I emphasize the punchlines, if I try to find the humor, no matter how stressful the situation might be, if cartoon me can find the humor in somebody being rude, somebody being mean or hateful, or just the anxiety that I'm going through, having to go through this process. I'm 6'2". I'm not, I do not pass in that regard. I walk into where sometimes if I'm sitting at a table in a restaurant, people don't notice it, but when I get up to pay the check, everyone turns their head.
Yeah.
And anyone who had a doubt all of a sudden does not. If I could find a way to make a punchline about that in the strip, and cartoon me could find a way to kind of laugh at it, then real me would be able to process that a little bit better. And over time, it absolutely worked. It was very therapeutic to address these issues. And I still address those issues in the strip whenever it happens, but it's not what my life is about.
Right.
The day-to-day of my life is just, we jokingly refer to it as an interestingly boring. We have an interestingly boring life. We do interestingly boring things. We go to the movies. We go out to eat. We go, whatever. I go to comic conventions or, book fairs or stuff like that. And if something interesting happens, it's going in the strip. I have a t-shirt I just think it says, "Warning, the person wearing this t-shirt is a cartoonist. This conversation could end up in a comic."
I
And
like that.
because everything, I don't really put very many, if you read Finding Dee on any given day, it's basically just me, Heidi, our dog, now our cats, and our son Rick on occasion. On occasion. But it's mostly just us because I don't want to be bothering. I don't want to be like we go to karaoke or something, and I don't want somebody going, "I don't like the way you wrote me in the strip." So it's like, I'm not going to write you in the strip then. It's awkward.
It is awkward, yeah. I like that. Not often do people, especially when they are finding themselves in a crossroads like you were coming out as transgender, being able to, in a healthy way, process that. Oftentimes people will find unhealthy ways to process it, or what ends up happening is the terrible ways that our society treats people in the community will cause them to go down even darker paths and eventually take their own lives. So the fact that you were able to take all of that and use that to further your career not only is astounding, but in my opinion, it's inspiring. I believe someone could really learn from that and use that for their own benefit. And I think that's something that really wanted to highlight with, just really focusing on that aspect of your story of Finding Dee, because I thought that was really awesome to really point out. So thank you so much for doing that and being brave enough to do that.
You are welcome. That is sometimes the best part of what I'm doing and sometimes the most uncomfortable part, because on one hand, I'm doing poop and fart jokes sometimes because, if that's a thing that happened and that, I had a particular, I am on a lot of different medications and constipation is a side effect of many of them. So that works its way into the comic strip. I have done strips about that. That's how frank it will get. But it's so frequently that, and yet on the same token, there are people in the town that I live in who have come out in part because my strip inspired them.
That's beautiful.
And that's kind of, honestly, it's hard to process sometimes, because on one hand you're like, oh my god, that's amazing. I did something that had that kind of an impact on somebody else's life. And I've had people have sent me letters or have come up to me at shows and been like, your strip inspired me. Or I've had people who have been like, I used to be very against this and very conservative, and reading your strip changed my point of view on that.
I love that.
And on one hand, that feels great. On one hand, I'm like, oh my god, really? That's amazing. I'm so glad. On the other hand, I'm just kind of like, don't want that level of responsibility. It's fart jokes and boob jokes. And jokes about my dog licking his butt.
It's a lot of power for one person to have.
I don't like it sometimes. Sometimes I'm like, yes. I have influenced humans. And on other hands, I'm like, oh god, I've influenced humans. What was I thinking? Just read my werewolf book.
At least you're using your power for good, though.
Too. I'm trying for good and for boob jokes.
We're always here for good boob jokes, so.
Yes.
So on that topic of not necessarily boob jokes, but other things that you've done, is there anything that you're currently working on in regards to your own personal work, or are you being commissioned for anything that you can talk about?
Well, I'll be starting the second issue of The Olympian with Paul soon.
Awesome.
Excited for that. I've got a project that I can't talk about yet that I'm working on. Finding Dee, I'm taking a smidge of a break for a couple of weeks because I was finishing the edits on the third novel in my werewolf series, which we just got the proofs, and The Knights of Argentum is the third novel in my series, and this is coming out on the 23rd of next month at the Oil City Festival of the Book. It's a local book fair at our local library that I'm going to be premiering the book at.
Awesome.
So I took a little bit of time off of the strip to kind of focus on the final edits. I'm written through to the 6th book because I'm a way faster writer than I am an editor. Editing stinks. But so I'm working on that. I've got commissions that I've got to get cleared off my plate. I'm going to be in Boston for the National Cartoonist Society's annual Rubens Award ceremony next month. Last year I was nominated for a short form comic strip. This year I was not nominated, but I still want to go because it's so much fun.
That sounds awesome.
I'll be at Comics Crossroads Columbus in Columbus, Ohio in September with Finding Dee. And we will, by that time, probably be launching the Kickstarter for the third colored volume. Currently have 2 colored volumes with Laguna Studios. The strip is normally black and white. And we've been running Kickstarters for the color volumes, the color collection. So this is volumes 1 and 2, which have come out the last 2 years. And volume 3 is in process right now, being colored by a wonderful colorist named Katie Rooston. And part of it, because it is volume 3, and one of the main stories in it is a storyline. So this actually did happen about 7 years ago. There was an 80s night karaoke at a local karaoke bar. And so Heidi and I got dressed up to the nines, big hair, neon pink, and I had leg warmers on. We were rocking it out, and we showed up a week early. No one else was there dressed up. And you will better believe that made its way into the comic strip. So because those strips are included in this, and it's volume 3, and it's got 80s theming, so it will be Finding Dee in 3D. Because I love me some classic Anaglyph Red and Blue 3D.
It's classic,
so there'll be a few pages of that, like a few special features for that will be in 3D. Not the whole book, because there's an entire point of that stuff will give you a headache.
Yeah. Well, that's awesome. I love that. Wow. So you're literally one of the busiest people I know.
And next month, the Kickstarter for Giant Girl Adventures, the hardcover, the 200 almost page collection I did of the book with Sabrina Pandora will be coming out as well. Here's all the editorial notes that we had.
That's a lot of notes.
So that Kickstarter actually launches the 5th of August.
Sweet. I'll link that in the description as well. Hopefully we can get some people to back it day one. Hopefully for a very successful Kickstarter.
It is an amazing book. I had so much fun. It's a size-changing superhero. It's like size-changing slacker superhero who gets magically shunted into a D&D world and has to figure out that the rules of being a superhero do not work in a world of magic and ogres and orcs and ice trolls.
That sounds like a fun story. Yeah, we're going to have to back that day one for the Kickstarter. So everyone, if you're watching this, go to the description and hit that link to back Giant Girl when it hits.
Yeah, free registration is live now.
Sweet. Yep. Awesome, Dee. This has been fun. I've enjoyed this. It's great to just pick other people's brains, and you having such a wide depth of knowledge and expertise in the field of comic book making made this 10 times more worth it. So thank you for sharing your knowledge. Final question before I let you go. If you had a creator that wanted to get started, whether they were an artist, writer, or a mixture of both, and they wanted some advice, what would be one piece of advice you would give them?
Just start doing the work. No matter what quality level you are at, just start telling the story. Start small. If you're the biggest mistake I think a lot of first-time comic creators or storytellers do is they've got that Watchmen in their heads, that big 12-issue epic. No, don't do that. Do a short story. Do a comic strip. Do something and get started, because finished is better than perfect. Perfect is also impossible.
Mm-hmm.
And it's that old John Romita Sr. advice. It's John Buscema's advice, I believe, that he told to a lot of early artists is throw out your erasers. Is keep working and get that next page better. Just punch through, push through. You've got to do the work. There's no shortcut. It's, how do I learn how to do this? Do it all the time. as often as you can and make it as good as you can. And then if that page isn't perfect, make the next page better and just keep going. You'll get better. It's almost impossible to get worse doing something you do all the time.
That is true. And I love that advice. And I think I remember hearing about that story about the guy telling them to throw out the eraser, because oftentimes many creators, they get stuck in trying to make everything perfect. And it stunts you from being able to finish, because it's like, well, this is not what I envisioned, or this is not the way I wanted it to go. And then next thing you know, you're stuck forever, or you never do anything else because you're stuck on that one page. So that's great advice, and I love it. Well, everyone, this has been Dee. Dee, tell the people where they can find you, follow you, and get more of your work.
I am all over social media, like Blue Sky and Substack and all kinds of things. Usually it's just finding Dee Fish or Dee Fish. If you go to artofdfish.com, that is my overall website, but you can find the comic strip at findingd.com. You can find my werewolf novels at havenwolf.com, one word, havenwolf.com. The Wellkeeper, my fantasy adventure comic, at thewellkeeper.com. And the Giant Girl Adventures is giantgirladventures.com. The Kickstarter is ggAkickstarter.com, and you can sign up now for pre-registration.
Awesome. All those links will be below, so click on them, follow Dee, look at the work that they're doing, and just show some support, because Dee is amazing. Thank you, Dee, again for jumping on here and spending the last 30 minutes just talking about yourself and things that you're doing. And hopefully you have even more success than you already have. So thank you so much, everyone, for watching. Again, this has been the Divergent Comics YouTube channel, and y'all have a great week.